Running back on some of our dwarf lords that we've covered, a lot of you guys have requested, specifically Thorek Ironbrow. And I am very happy to talk about him because he is a very different lord as well. And a lot of the lords we've talked about so far, to just beat off a dead horse, or whatever the saying is, have been unique. They've been different. I mean, obviously we talked about Wolfheart and how he is a huntsman rather than a typical Empire lord. We talked about Bugman and how he is a ranger and not simply this dwarf thane. Thorek Ironbrow today we'll talk about is a rune lord, so he would be an actual casting lord, something that we don't have as an actual legendary lord for the dwarf roster in Total War Warhammer. So let's talk about Thorek Ironbrow, Master Rune Lord of Karak Azul, as well as the Battle of Valaya's Gate, which is the end times portion that kind of concludes Thorek's story. So let's go into our little lore blurb as always. Thorek Ironbrow is a rune lord like unto those of legend. In the best of his moods, he is fiercely irate and a living terror to his apprentices in the weapons shop of Karak Azul, where he has ruled for centuries on end. A traditionalist in every sense, Thorek cannot abide new technology and takes every opportunity to speak his mind on new inventions. Fortunately, he lends not just his counsels, but also his strong arm to Thorgrim Grudgebearer. Like his High King, Thorek too longs to reclaim the Dwarf Empire of old, but he also has a personal quest. He seeks lost relics of the ancient days. For this reason, Thorek is extremely active and can be found aiding throngs from many different clans and holds. Of late, Thorek has been deep underground, buoying the dwarf battle lines and unleashing the fury of his anvil of doom upon the skaven that fill the underhalls of Karak Eight Peaks. He is not only helping the cause of King Belegar, but also searching for those sealed treasure vaults that have yet been refound. Each new discovery of ancient rune artifacts helps keep the precious runecraft of his forefathers alive and ensures that no further holds fall. Thorek can never be found without his Anvil of Doom, and his most able assistant, a long-suffering dwarf named Kragi. Most of the time, Kragi is a great aid to Thorek, but on occasion, his inexperience, he's only been smithing a century, causes issues. When Kragi is paying sufficient attention to his master's gruff commands, no living rune lord can match Thorek's prowess on the Anvil of Doom. With a resounding clang on his anvil, Thorek Ironbrow grounds enemy spells and smites those who would dare defy the growing might of the dwarfs. And this is something we see that is very common in the Dwarf 8th edition book. They're all very not reminiscent, but all very they hunger for the old Karazankor. They want that resurgence of the Dwarf Empire throughout all the holds, I almost said of Middle Earth, of the Old World and of the Southlands, and, well, portions of Norsca. I mean, obviously they weren't very high up there. But the dwarfs want this resurgence so badly. And in the end times, things kind of turn very poorly for the dwarves very quickly and very initially. In the Nagash book, the very first book to come out for the end times, it was just quite literally a beheading of the majority of the characters right out the gate. And not even to make a pun here about the Battle of Valaya's Gate. So before Nagash had really kind of come to super duper prominence to become an actual god, he had to go through a series of kind of like Herculean trials, I guess you could say. Essentially what happens is he raises his Mortarks, and this is your Neferata, your Arkin the Black, Krell is a Mortark actually, and your the bald vampire, Manfred von Karstein. All of these are part of his Mortarks. They're basically his vampire or undead captains, and they're super duper like souped up in end times. They have these really awesome ass mounts. And Neferata goes to Valaya's Gate at the behest of Nagash, saying, "Hey, go there, and I want the essence, the power, the godhood of Valaya." And he sends Krell there as well, and on a different route. So they pretty much are going to be meeting up at Valaya's Gate. And it's a really interesting point in the book. Like, there's a Battle of Skull Chasm, in which case Neferata just sweeps through multiple clans and hordes of greenskins, just kills them to the man, just butchers them. And it's kind of scary because, it talks about how the greenskins are getting the upper hand, and then Neferata stops being bored and resummons every single dead thing on the battlefield, and immediately the greenskins are just swept asunder. So you get an idea that She's way more proficient in necromancy than most lords and heroes we've seen in the lore as of late. But what happens is there's this kind of titanic meeting at the Battle of Valaya's Gate. And the Valaya's Gate itself is not too far from Karak Azul. And this is where Thorek Ironbrow decides to make a stand. He takes his elite fighting force, he takes his Anvil of Doom, which he has obviously never seen without, and we'll talk about that a little bit more once we go into his special rules and everything like that. But he kind of has these the Iron Guard, you know, the Brotherhood of the Anvil, which are essentially you can think of them as a regiment of renown. In the end times, they talk about every single unit. You know, they talk about Iron Guards, they talk about Iron Breakers, and they all have a special name. Every single unit in time. So pretty much the end times is filled with nothing but regiments of renown rather than just, this is just this arbitrary spearman unit. It's, Assyrians, blades! They're all named. But the Brotherhood of the Anvil, they kind of just, they stem this huge tide against a massive undead army led by Neferata through into Valaya's Gate. And what eventually starts off as just two armies having a conflict just gets blown out of proportion amazingly. So you've got Thorek and you've got Neferata squaring off, and you've got Druthor, which is a Strigoi ghoul king, comes in from Grimbarrow and attacks the dwarf line, and you've got another dwarf Thane Cragson, who is basically holding the line against Druthor. So you now have, 4 whole armies here. But I mean, why would we want to stop that? So you've got another army that comes from King Cazador, which is the king of Karak Azul, and his kind of elite guard, the Sternbeard clan, the Boulder Goats, Mountain Bolts. It's all these pomp names, these amazing names. And then a Goblin warlord, Gruslik Moonclaw comes, so shit just keeps piling fucking on. Think like Hobbit Battle of Five Armies, just not shitty like the movies. And this is just this rampant destruction is going on as all of these armies are fighting each other. The dwarfs hate greenskins, they hate undead, and the greenskins hate undead and hate dwarfs, and the undead hate greenskins and dwarfs, so they're all fighting each other for their own reasons. Obviously, the Battle of Skull Chasm has left a bad taste in the greenskins' mouth, and they hunger for, I don't want to say blood because they're undead, but they're trying to get some revenge here, but at the same time, they're embroiled with the dwarf lines. You have this massive conflict going on. And eventually, again, Neferata kind of stops getting bored and goes to make an attack on Thorek Ironbrow and sweeps through with her Lamian vampires directly into the heart of his retinue and kills the retinue to a man. And Thorek, kind of as part of the last vestiges of his strength, strikes his Anvil of Doom, and it kills one of Neferata's chief lieutenants. So Neferata is not having that and just guts him right in just stomach, left to right, opens him up like a fucking Christmas present. And Thorek kind of falls, and at that point, you've got Krell and King Cazador that are fighting hand in hand, tooth and nail, beard and undead helmet, and the Dwarf King actually brings Krell to his knees, which you can imagine is a very monumental feat. Krell is a hand-to-hand close combat powerhouse. He's dead. He's a Chaos champion, but sure, he knows his way around the blade. And right at the last moment, Krell kind of backhands his axe up and through King Cazador's head, cutting it clean off. That essentially kind of takes all the thunder, no pun intended, out of the dwarf army. And right at this moment, kind of Thorek Ironbrow comes back, I guess, from the shock of having his stomach cut open, and raises his giant hammer, clad Barakak, one last time and strikes his Anvil of Doom so hard that it explodes his anvil and fills the entire cavern with electricity and lightning and all sorts of awesome rune magic and dwarf beards screaming and hollering, and everything for the most part is wiped clean, like a tactical dwarf nuke. And the last vestiges of King Cazador's army take the headless body of their king and they retreat, and what is left is essentially Krell and Neferata, and that is it. The goblins are completely obliterated by this nuke, and with that last portion, Thorek opens the gates to Valaya, because it was said that when the gates open, a new golden age will continue and resume will rise again for the dwarfs. This does not come to pass. Instead, Nagash enters the gates of Valaya and draws all of the magic from a sleeping Valaya, one of the 3 patron gods of the dwarf quote-unquote pantheon. It is rumored that there is another dwarf god in Valaya's gate somewhere, but that is nothing ever gets done with that in End Times, because as cool as what I've just said sounds, there's just plot holes asunder, and I try to give you guys a really cool thematic and cinematic portrayal of what is essentially a big bowl of soupy shit. But I'm not bitter at all. So now that we've kind of got that and we know exactly where Thorek Ironbrow plays into the End Times and his ultimate doom, unfortunately, let's talk a little bit about his special rules and his magic items. So we know him to be obviously this Rune Lord. In tabletop, you don't have him separate from his Anvil of Doom. He's only on his Anvil of Doom. And maybe that would just be like a level 10, level 12 upgrade for him in the actual campaign portion, or if you're in a quick battle, he'd still probably have that ability to choose the Anvil of Doom at his own behest. So, because he has his own little anvil guard, so he has his own little retinue, which is kind of cool. And I think that'd be kind of cool too, is to have him forced onto the Anvil of Doom without any choice. But that Anvil of Doom is way stronger. Because, I mean, who takes the Anvil of Doom unless they're trying to make a thematic build or a meme build for the dwarfs? I think if we have a way that makes this Anvil of Doom really cool, it'd work. So I challenge more or less. And with what they're already kind of doing to the dwarfs, hopefully these little kind of tweaks here and there that we've seen from these little teasers, that we'll get some sort of tweak to the Anvil of Doom, which is an otherwise pretty uneventful ability, which in the dwarf army of Total War, when it was pretty huge in the dwarf army of tabletop. So I'd love to see that kind of make a comeback here. So he's the Master of Ancient Lore, meaning he gets a bonus to essentially casting all of his spells, his runes. The way I would see this, though, is maybe he just has an extra charge of all the runes. Like Wrath and Ruin, rather than having 3, it's got 4. I think it actually has 4 natively, so it has 5. So maybe he has extra charges of these runes, or he has runes that recycle a little bit faster, like Rune of Armor and Shielding and so on and so forth. I'd love to see that, because to make this portrayal that he is the Master Rune Lord, and he is so much older than the other Rune Lords and kind of has a better take on this, and makes the Anvil of Doom overall stronger, because, you know, he's got the Locus of Power as a result of that, and certain abilities that the Anvil of Doom grants him. I'd love to see that kind of represented in a better way. I know it's already kind of there, but I need to see it more. And I think that him as a campaign lord, I think he would give a lot of benefits or a lot of bonuses to runesmiths ranks, runesmiths recruitment pool and stuff like that. And a lot of the same way we see with other caster lords. They make it so that you can pump out a level 4 caster on turn 2 with this caster lord because of his campaign mechanics. That's the way I'd really love to see him kind of put into the game from a campaign standpoint. And I think on the board, as far as from a quick battle multiplayer standpoint, I think he's going to have to be, again, he's going to have to be a force to reckon with if he's going to be a stationary war machine. You know, quick battles, you don't not move. You're got to be pretty mobile. So that's kind of why the Anvil of Doom is rarely seen. So let's talk about his magic items. Clad Barakak. Thorek's anvil-headed rune hammer is a formidable weapon of war. Thorek designed the new rune that is struck upon the hammer, and as of yet, it is unproven. Being only a few centuries old, Thorek wishes to give the rune a fair trial before allowing others to duplicate it. Essentially, this would... there's nothing really crazy about this. The way Arcane Unforging, which is a spell in the game, the Destroyer, which is a weapon that Malekith has in the game, it would destroy magic items. Clad Barakak does the same thing. So it would have AP, it would be magic damage. I would see that those two characters just because they're directly from the actual description of this. But I would see it as also having something that increases miscast chance by a certain percentage as well. Something that affects magic things, because obviously the Destroyer doesn't overall negate magic items. It resets their recycle. So that could be another option I would see happen for this as well, you know. Here's what the actual book says. Additionally, if the victim suffers one or more unsaved wounds, any magic armor, magic helmets, and magic shields they were equipped with are destroyed and cannot be used for the remainder of the game. So, the one thing that makes Clad Barakak from the tabletop perspective stronger than, say, the Destroyer or Arcane Forging is that Clad Barakak destroys all of them, not just one. Any magic armor, weapons, helmets, shields that were equipped are destroyed, versus the other one is always just one. So I'd like to see this be a little bit true to that form, and maybe then rather than just being a simple recycle, it's a recycle for a lot longer or something like that. It'd be awesome if we would just outright, at random, negate a ability that a character had. So that'd be, the only way to counter that would be to not choose abilities, but still. I'd love to see this thing have a little bit more sweeping effect than just simply a destroyer duplicate in the dwarf roster. So his last ability, or last magic item here, is Thorek's Rune Armor. Made by Thorek himself, this armor has turned a giant's club and allowed Thorek to walk unscathed, or some smoldering, through the flames of the worm Drushel. So Thorek's Rune Armor just confers basically a normal +1 save to him. That's it. A 1-up save, so it just means he's got a very, very, very high armor save in Total War. Maybe the way we could see the, I'm sorry, in tabletop, the way Total War could kind of equate this would be he would have his innate high magic resistance, so maybe some sort of ward mechanic built into this, because obviously he can't have a 1-up save in a Total War. So he's going to have, I would see him having very high melee defense and melee armor, being even more tanky of a runesmith than we see in the dwarf roster already. He's going to be, and this is, it's true of all runesmiths that they are somewhat hybrid, but he would definitely be more a true hybrid in the sense that he is very strong in melee combat and can do considerable amount of damage and has a really great magic repertoire available to him. So I think that Thorek Ironbrow is a really cool option and a really different option to what we've already seen on the roster of the dwarfs, and what we've already kind of, I mean, a lot of you guys love Ungrim. I love Ungrim. A lot of you guys love Belegar and Thorgrim. They're all really awesome, but I think Thorek is really cool. And we'll talk about another lord here in our next video, Grim Burlockson, because he is a master engineer, and I want to kind of hit these lords that are a little bit more unique and a little bit different, and I think they pose a bigger challenge to Creative Assembly to incorporate into a Total War Warhammer in a concise, lore-true way. But thanks for watching here today, guys. Please go ahead and comment below on what you think Thorek Ironbrow would maybe be like in a Total War Warhammer scenario, or maybe some other of the dwarf lords you want to hear about, or other lords in general. As always, guys, I'm always open to your suggestions about doing things. But thanks for watching here. Don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, all that jazz. Have a good one, and take care.